What is it you want, Barry? What do you want? You want the moon? Just say the word and I'll throw a lasso around it and pull it down.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, dying times here.
Come with me if you want to live.
That's it, man. Game over, man. Game over.
The Force will be with you, always.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to 20th Century Geek. I'm your regular host, Scott Weatherly, and the Superman journey continues. And as before, I'm joined by the last son of Krypton himself, Mike Burton. How are you doing? You okay?
Yeah, doing well. It's I said before when we spoke in part one about I'm not sure I'd ever seen this film, and I can confirm I hadn't. I'd never. I've seen clips of it. I know bits and pieces, but yeah, fresh going into this. And I sat down. Megan was out one evening, and I sat down and watched the whole thing in one go by myself. And then I know this is jumping way ahead. I did a bit of research on the Donner cut and stuff, so I'm very excited to do that. I didn't watch the Donner cut; I watched the theatrical release. Yeah, but I'm very excited to talk about that when we get there. But thanks again for having me on for a second time. Appreciate it. These double bill, which actually works quite well in the context of how these movies are put together as well.
It does, yeah. That's it. The continuity, yeah. I'm going to kick you out halfway through, bring another podcast in,
and to try and pick up the pieces without hearing what I did.
That's it, yeah. And we'll do the there'll be the legendary Burton cut. That's what we'll have. Yes, we are talking about Superman 2, 1980, starring Christopher Reeve as Clark Kent, Superman, Margot Kidder as Lois Lane. Gene Hackman as Lex Luthor.
Who had top billing for some reason in the start in the credits.
He does in both the first ones. It's bizarre.
The first one you could understand because Chris Reeve's less known, but in this one where you think that the first film really launched Chris Reeve in the upright, he's definitely the main person. And also because Lex has a much bigger role in the first movie. So you're like, when I saw Gene Hackman come up first, I was like, but I know he's not the main guy in this. Like, what?
Sorry, I kind of feel like now. I feel like there was a contracting thing because it covers both films. I'm kind of like, like Brando's gone for the most part, and then, yeah. So yeah, no, it's a good. Obviously you've then got the others. Sarah Douglas as Ursa,
Terrence Stamp.
Jackie Halloran as Non, and of course.
He's really far back on IMDb. I don't know why. When I was looking at the cast, he's like really far back, and I was like, he should probably be third or fourth billing, I'd say.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I would expect it. Like, I think he's still he's a British actor at this point, so I don't know how well known he is, but I think this kind of made him. Everyone knows him as Zod, and then he goes on to other things. Another name in this, or another person I recognise, which I think is funny, is Clifton James, who plays Sheriff in the small town. He is better known as the sheriff from the Roger Moore James Bond films.
Oh, I've not seen that much Roger Moore James Bond, to be honest. So I've seen bits. James Bond is one of the things I don't know. At some point in my life, I want to do like a full watch of all of them. But it's such a massive. The films are all quite long, especially the recent ones. And I've seen bits and pieces of Brosnan because that was who was like popular when I was growing up. I've seen Casino Royale with Daniel Craig, and then I've seen like lots of bits and pieces of the other ones. I've seen I remember Sean Connery's because I remember watching clips of that in media because we were comparing that, and I think we did a little Bond media lesson in college as well. So it's like this what Sean Connery's Bond was like, and here's what Pierce Brosnan's and different interpretations of Bond. So I've got like a very, very loose idea of a lot of them, but I don't think I've seen much more or Timothy Dalton. Actually, they're the ones I've seen very little of.
So maybe one day we'll do that.
Oh,
get one for the
maybe next year that could be
it'll be a full year.
Yeah, it would.
But like you say, it's weird how sort of like the villain gets top billing. Wouldn't happen now, I don't think. And Christopher Reeve, I've got to say, I enjoy. Christopher Reeve is Superman in that first film. You have the young Superman, the baby Superman, then he becomes the Christopher Reeve Superman. I feel like he is much more confident in this one.
Yeah.
Like he feels sort of like he's done it and fulfilled the role, and he just feels much more rounded as a character.
The lines in the sand, in a way, like you can really feel like it was almost a bit of trepidation in the first one to a degree. He still did a great job, especially that we spoke about it. That scene where he catches the bullet and he kind of stumbles and fumbles. That bit is one of my favorite things in both these movies. But yeah, I think he really does feel more comfortable, and he feels a lot more on it, which is also interesting considering how he had quite a lot of disdain for when it came to the Donna to Lester thing. It was like, it's quite interesting because I looked up quite a bit of behind the scenes stuff, and it was like he was one of the real big criticizers of this, and I think he almost didn't come back. And then because obviously Brando didn't, and then Gene Hackman didn't, and all that kind of stuff. And I think they probably threw a lot of money at him, or he was kind of like maybe for the fans or something. I don't know that detail, but surprising that I'm sure we'll get into it. But like talking about how many issues this film had behind the scenes, I'm surprised how well it came out. Like the theatrical cut there is, it's a bit like Star Wars reference immediately. You watch Rogue One and you go, this is one of the best Star Wars films ever made. And then you look at what it was like behind the scenes, you're like, how did this happen? It was just like 1 in 20 films that actually has really horrendous behind the scenes stuff, just comes out like a gem almost.
That film was like, you watch the trailer, a similar thing, like, you watch the trailer and then you watch the film and you're like, nothing's in it from what I saw. Like, this makes no sense. Yeah, it feels very similar. And I do think Reeves, Christopher Reeve, has this kind of like Nimoy response to, like, Nimoy had that response to Spock, didn't he? It was like, I'm not Spock. Like, that was, everyone knew him as that, and he tried to do other things. He kind of sort of feel that like Reeves sort of like, this was his breakout thing. I can feel there's a caution around being Superman. Because he was never beyond this. He sort of done a couple of things. Obviously, there was the tragedy of his accident, but he never kind of reached these heights again. So I do kind of feel there's that he wanted to be like, do one, but was also, this is don't bite the hand that feeds you in Hollywood kind of thing.
Yeah, I wonder if he was influenced by Brando, because Brando was notorious for that kind of, I'm an actor and I'm better than everyone. And it's like, okay, probably not that great. Like, he's great. Brando's great in a lot of things, but it's like I think he was too big for his boots in a lot of respects.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. No, yeah. Massively overrated in my opinion. But
yeah, I've seen him quite a few things. In Godfather, I was like, oh, he's pretty good. And then, but he's actually not in the film that much. And I was like, okay. And I've not seen Apocalypse Now, ashamedly. I know there's like 5.
He's not in that much either, to be fair.
Isn't he? Okay. What is he in? Like, was it the Streetcar Named Desire? Was that him?
Yeah.
So I don't think I've seen him in barely anything. To be honest with you, I think Superman 1's probably the most amount of screen time I've seen of him.
Yeah. No, he's not. It's an odd one. It's a weird, like, I think it's overrated. I think Gene Hackman is obviously recently passed as sort of, but like he's great in the 70s. Like, he's much more of a range and does some great films. And he's kind of playful and fun in this, and that's why I do appreciate he's got a good presence. And I think him having that presence allows Reeve, especially later on, allows Reeve to not just be like the big boy Blue Scout. Like, we know he is that, but like he can play it a bit sort of sterner or do a few of the things, because you've got Hackman's Lex Luthor sort of able to bounce off, or just there to sort of keep a bit of joviality as well, so it can sort of, it can work.
And I think it works as well because where Zod is so serious and so over the top, and Terrence Stamp is great in this, but he's probably about 2 or 3% too much, but just a bit. Do you know what I mean? Like, but because Hackman is so almost campy, but still it's quite scary in some respects, because he is powerful, but he's kind of campy. And the fact he keeps referring to himself as Lex Luthor, the smartest man ever, and that kind of jazz. Yeah. Like, when he's in the room in the White House smoking the cigar stuff like that, the balance of that, I think, really works, and it makes Superman work well. And I wonder if this film, maybe partly people learn the wrong lessons from this film of thinking, we need to have lots of different villains in every single film. I think Batman really hurt that again, because especially when you get to and Robin and Forever, where it's like, we can't have one villain, we have to have two. It's like, one is normally enough, one or maybe a minor one, and then an actual big bad. That can work quite well. But I feel like with this film, people are like, Superman 2 worked really well. He had one really big bad, another really big bad, and then 2 other villains who are also kind of bad. So we've actually got 4 villains in this film. And I wonder if people learned the wrong lessons, maybe starting with this kind of thing. Oh,
I think so. I also think this film is very different to Superman the movie.
Yes, yeah.
Considering they are sort of a continuation and stuff, and it works very well as a sort of a continuation and as a sequel. But I feel that the tone and the objective are very different. So the first one is a saga. It's an epic. Like, it tells the story of, it's not just sort of like, boy found in Rocket or in Crater, become Superman. Like, it's not like you get all the young stuff and you get a lot of other stuff, and then it builds up. And there's never like a punchy scene really in the first Superman film. Like, it's all of his shows of strength and his powers, and we're going to talk about the real inconsistency of powers in this film.
Oh yeah, got some
how
notes.
Bizarre, like Silver Age and sort of like Golden Age powers up the wazoo. But like in the first film, like it's all about like him saving the train, or fixing the dam, or doing something else, like taking a kitten out of a tree. Like all of these shows of strength are positive. There's no but then in this one has the punchy ending, which I'm not decrying because I actually really enjoy it, but it kind of again feels like the wrong lesson where people are like, that's what we would need to have. You need to have the climactic fight, and I think that's then solidified by Batman and so on and so forth. And now, like then you go to I will get to it, is Batman, Man of Steel.
This feels like Man of Steel feels almost like a soft remake of this. It's like in a lot of ways. I know they're both heavily inspired by some of the stuff in the comics, but it's I think you're very right of what you said there, because it feels like the first Superman film feels like, I think I may have said something similar in our last recording, but like Superman the movie feels like an amazing human people movie.
Yes.
And the one gimmick, the one thing that kind of makes it stand out is there's a superhuman alien guy in it. And that works as a big film. It feels very lived in. This does feel like a superhero film. This feels like this is a film about a superhero, and this is like the next episode in this superhero's life. What's Superman doing now? He's doing this. Whereas the first film was just like, here's a guy who just and a family really that just kind of happens to have these powers. And that's the thing again with Man of Steel. And I stand by this in Man of Steel. I think the first half of Man of Steel is some of the best superhero stuff in the last couple of decades. When I remember, I didn't watch Man of Steel because everyone shat on it, and I was like, I didn't watch in the cinema. I love Watchmen, one of my favorite films ever. And so when Snyder was doing stuff, I was quite excited. Nowadays it's, but like Man of Steel, watched the first half like by myself. I don't DVD or something. And I remember watching I got about an hour through. I was like, why is everyone talking about this? Is phenomenal. This is so good. There's so many amazing things. And then it's like, the fighting now takes up the other half of the film. And it's like, okay, this is just meaningless punching CGI messy crap. And I feel like this film is, the way I describe it, this film, Superman the movie, I think the whole way through is really enjoyable. There's a couple of sillier moments, but generally it's like, this is 7 out of 10, 8 out of 10, maybe even 9 out of 10. Just really smooth ride. This film is kind of like, this is probably part of the because of the way it was cut and stuff, is like there are parts where I'm like, this is amazing, and there's another part and I'm like, what is happening? And they're like, this is awesome. Okay, no, it isn't. And it's quite peaks and troughs, and although I did enjoy the film, glad I watched it, but it is, and I did say it does feel like a whole film. I'm surprised it came out so well, but I meant that in a sense of, it doesn't, just from watching it, not knowing all the history behind it, I wouldn't have said this feels like a trouble production. But then I think when you find out the amount of trouble production, you go, I can kind of see that now in that bit or that bit. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. Oh no, I agree. I also think the pacing of this film kind of feels weirdly off, and I've never thought about it before. But I was watching it this time, and I was like, this doesn't. Again, this goes back to that production thing where you can tell that they've cobbled things together and filled gaps and that sort of thing. But it kind of feels like, the pacing of this structurally and narratively doesn't quite work. Like, it's not bad. It's just that thing of going like, there's like a nerviness from going like, this doesn't feel right. Like, this whole subplot of Superman giving up his superpowers for Lois, cool, all well and good, but like, and it obviously ties into the end, but it's like, that just feels kind of like a weird, I don't know, it feels like that should be more.
Or what I mean? It should either be more or not be there at all.
Yes, exactly.
That's the only two things I knew about this film, apart from the vague, I knew very briefly that there was a Donner cut, and I knew the director exited the film for one reason or another, which obviously now I know about. And all the other stuff I knew about it was just Zod and losing his powers. That's it. That's all I knew going into this. And I tried to go into this without knowing too much. Then afterwards, I did loads of research. And I thought him losing his powers was going to be like a massive part. It's in the synopsis of the film. Everyone talks about it. But I think it's only a thing for about 15, maybe 20 minutes.
It's really short.
Like, I was like, but this, when I hear about it, this feels like, it almost feels like, again, it feels like two films. It almost feels like there should have been this film without him losing his powers, and Gene Hackman should have stayed in prison.
Yeah.
Then, Lex Luthor. Then Superman 3, which I've heard is atrocious, is what that should have been, is really honing in on him losing his powers, taking real time, and not just doing it because he should for some bizarre, unknown reason, for no reason. It should be like, something's got Lois, and the only way to save Lois and humanity is for him to give up his powers, and then this super being leaves them alone. And then he spends his life being normal, and it's like a real long period of time, and do it very differently because he gets his ass handed to him in the bar. And it's like, Reeve is not a small person. he without any powers, he could probably kick most people's ass. Yeah. So, and I'm like, it's quite annoying because I feel if you flushed that out and had a whole film where the majority of the film was actually him without powers and really delved into it a bit more, I think that could have worked. But it doesn't quite feel like enough. And I remember hearing it, I was like, oh, where's this going to go? And then he was just like, oh, I got the shit kicked out of me. Well, I'm going to go get my powers back. And I was like, what? And then he does. And you're like, oh, okay.
That's the thing with this. I think that's what I find is everything's too easy.
Yeah.
In this film. Like, there's no debate at any point. Like, Superman, like let's be clear. I love the opening of this film. The start of this film is great. Like, I love
after the 8-minute recap.
Yes.
Just 8 minutes, I counted. I was like, "How? No, I've seen this fucking film already."
Yeah, I just flipped through. I literally like go. Yeah, like it's ridiculous. They didn't have VHS in them days. It's pre-home media, so course, I get why. But it is like irritating. No, but the whole first thing, like with the whole thing in Paris, I like the fact that it kind of this is almost like this is not Superman. Like, this isn't kind of like Ultimate Superman or whatever. Like, he's still Clark Kent. Like, he misses what's going on with the terrorists because he was at home. Like, he's like, oh, I don't have a TV. I was reading Dickens. I love that. He's like, I was at home reading Dickens. Don't have a television. And Lois has gone off to Paris, and so there's the whole thing of, like, say, with the Eiffel Tower. All that's good. It's like, it's charming. It's everyone in it's good. I like it. It sets up the characters. Again, it's non-aggressive in that sense of, like, it's not Superman like beating the crap out of some terrorists. Like, it's all about the bomb, and he does sorts out the terrorists, but the bomb in space and then all this other stuff. So I like all that, but everything's kind of like, oh, that just happens. This nuclear explosion in space just happens to be the thing that could disrupt the Phantom Zone. So you're like, okay, contrivance number one, and then sort of they go off to, where is it, like Niagara Falls.
Yep.
And there's a whole thing there where she figures out Clark is Superman, and it builds up, and he drops his glasses in the fire and all that sort of stuff. Again, all of that is good from my perspective. I'm watching it going like, this is good. I love the bit when he finally decides to reveal himself, and he again does that, sort of inflates, and he turns around, and she's like, you are Superman. He's like, yeah. All that's good. And then they go on this like date thing, and again, I'm like, okay, it's all fine. But the fact he then goes, I love her, and I'm going to forsake my powers. And you're like, hang on, no. Kind of like, this is just... Lois doesn't even stop him.
Yeah, she's quite a logical character. She's actually quite cold to him a lot of the time. And it's like, I am a bit confused. I'm like, obviously Margot Kidder is very attractive. She's very intelligent. She can fend for herself. Lots of very attractive qualities. But he's like head over heels, and she's like never really nice to him. No. She's quite nice when he's Superman, but it's unclear between the movies how long has passed and if Superman's actually saved her many times or had any real interactions. From how she acts in Niagara Falls when he flies away, I got the impression that she hasn't seen him for 6 months or several months since he saved her life a couple of times in the first film. So I'm like, okay, she kind of doesn't really like you as a person, Clark. Yeah, you are a different person to Superman, but really, you're a really nice guy. You're just a bit of a dork. And I found that really endearing him as Clark. I really like Clark. I
like his Clark Kent. Yeah,
so nice, and he's so innocent. And the whole, as you say, when he's talking about like, I just sat home reading Dickens, and I love that. And I was like, you seem like such a great guy. But Lois is quite mean to him quite a lot and quite rude. And I'm like, I don't know why you're so into her so quickly. And as you say, like, I know it's kind of a kid's film, but I can't remember if this is in a comic or something, but something like Superman's basically radioactive, and if he sleeps with someone, it can kill them or something. I don't know if I've imagined that or if that's in a comic or some sort of version of Superman.
I'm not sure. There's a whole, like, in, I think it's in one of the Kevin Smith films, they suggest, I think it's more in Mallrats.
Maybe
they talk about the fact he can't, I think it's Brody at one point says, that he can't sleep with Lois Lane because when he ejaculates, it's like a shotgun. He blow a hole through her back.
That might, to be honest, yeah, I've watched quite a lot of Kevin Smith, so that's probably it. So it's weird because I think, especially because the whole losing power thing is right in the middle, and I'm like, if they didn't have that bit, I think it would all work so much better. But there really doesn't seem to be a reason as to why he gives up his powers. There's the whole, I think the pacing is really messed up because of that whole scene. Because again, the first film builds and builds and builds. This film's really punchy start, contrivance aside, it's punchy, it's good, not like a full stuff. I was like, it's not, I didn't like it quite as much as you did. I was a bit like when he goes to such insane lengths to not have her find out, almost letting her die. I feel like what should have almost happened is she got knocked out by something. Then he had to save her Superman. And then when he's like nursing her back to health in the hotel was probably like, this is too much. I need to come clean because she's genuinely doing crazy stuff now.
Yeah.
For me, that would have worked a bit better. But I did like the hand and fire thing. I thought it wasn't bad. But when he's just like, yeah, I love you and I'm willing to give up everything. There's a criticism that I've heard about Steve Rogers in Endgame, which is when he basically gives up being a hero to be with Peggy. And I am not necessarily got an issue with it, but I think the criticism is that Captain America is so selfless, he would never do that because that's quite a selfish thing to do, is like, oh, the world doesn't need the Avengers. Yeah, but it still probably needs Captain America,
Yeah.
And I think in this, it's just so weird that the first film is establishing he's such a nice guy. He's literally saving cats from trees. And the first film, he saves a Lois from the terrorist thing. Now, granted, maybe one could argue he's only really obsessed with Lois and not necessarily saving people, but I feel like if Lois wasn't there, he probably would have considered going over there anyway. But it just seems odd that you go, I have got powers that no one else has. I'm the only last person left. And I'm literally willing to, in the North Pole, right? So I was like, if you give it your powers, how the hell are you getting back? Which is a question. It's a big question mark. It's like the Batman Dark Knight Rises issue. But like, you're literally willing to give up potential immortality, completely invulnerability to like anything, all because your mum said you shouldn't be with a human without any thought. And I'm like, but that's actually for how Boy Scouty Superman often is and how moral he is and how I view Superman as a very moral character. And then you go, yeah, I'm just going to throw that away, basically to have sex. And you're like, that feels not very Superman-y.
Oh, no, I agree.
The Boys, do you know what I mean? That feels like almost a character. It almost feels like Homelander would do something more like that than actual Superman. It felt really weird.
Well, I think the thing is as well, when you remember that in the first film, he spent, 18 years being educated by his father and everything. And it sort of says the whole speech about, helping them into the sunlight and all this other stuff. Like, he's there to be this sort of figure of hope and you're bigger than just one man and all this other stuff, right? So the whole film is about embracing. The first film is all about embracing that role as being Superman. Like, donning the blue suit isn't just a blue suit, it's an acceptance of a role. Like, he's saying, like, this is who I will be. And the fact that that's never debated in this film, where it's sort of like, there needs to be a debate of like, look, there are no threats to this planet that I'm really needed for. You need to show that, like, I've helped progress things and I've made things better. I've provided hope. People are better. It's shown that the world is in a better place. Maybe it's time for me to, I think this is like the third or fourth film. There should be like 4 or 5 maybe in the series.
Like, he spent years doing it, and Lex has been away for a long time, and there's no other, almost like other things have come up, but they're so beneath Superman. Almost kind of what it felt like Justice League was almost doing a little bit, which is kind of like all these other heroes really struggle to beat this bad. Superman is so beyond anything. He just comes in, boom, and then boom, and comes out and problem solved. Almost like that happened in Superman 2. Then Superman 3, he kind of starts to struggle because he's almost kind of bored, but he feels guilty about being bored. Then Superman 4 could be, okay, I've come to the conclusion, spent 5 years, as you say, I've done world peace. You know, the kind of almost the Watchmen, Dr. Manhattan idea. And then you could be like, okay, but this is like quite early on. This is like, I don't even know if it's been a year since Superman's come out. So you're like, well, so you've come out after 18 years in there. You've beat Lex Luthor, who's just a smart guy. And then you've just gone, yeah, pretty much done now. Bye. It's like,
yeah, I love her. And you're like, do you? Yeah. Are you sure you don't just have a boner? I have a boner. This is Superman thinking with his dick. That's what it is. He's just horny.
He needs post-nut clarity, to be honest.
He does, exactly, yeah. Go bash one out and then think about it again, Superman. Come back later. Yeah, it just feels so weird that, like, and then, like you say, there's a you know, I do like the point you make as well, that they go to the Fortress of Solitude, he loses his powers, and the next scene is them driving to, like, an Alaskan hot dog place. And then he gets the crap kicked out of him. Again, this bit sort of kind of bothers me. And he tries to be moral and stand up and all this other stuff, and this guy punches him. And I'm kind of I'm fine with this in concept, because there's going to be a moment where like someone hits him, and he's going to be like, "Oh shit, that's what pain is." Like it should shock him. Like, oh, like I've never experienced this. And so I accept it on that level. But then when he does finally just like, because then he never leaves Alaska without his powers, so he's very sort of like, you know, this happens, they see the thing with Zod and that on the news, and he's like, I've got to go back, and you're like, hang on, this is not flicking on a switch, like, you know, this needs to have a sacrifice. There needs to be something, not just you giving up Lois, because he kind of doesn't, but the point he makes is him returning to the Fortress of Solitude is difficult. It seems to be like really tough to get there. And also, there's other people that have gone to the Fortress of Solitude, and they've had to have a dog sled and a hot air balloon.
It's like 2 days, I think he said. It was like a 2-day trip with Mrs. Teschmacher, who just completely disappears out of the film. And it's like, yeah, and it's just one of those weird things where I'm like, you made this choice to do these things, and it feels like almost someone was like, right, I'm making this film, and I've got 3 bullet points to hit.
Yeah.
And then you've really flushed out bullet point 1 and bullet point 3. And then you've got like most of the film done. And then you're like, but I've got to fit 2 in. And I think there's what I'm not a writer. You know, I've written an essay, which should be in Comics Lit at some point in the future, and I'm planning to write some more. So I'm prospective. But like, you're a writer, Tony and other friends of ours and things. And very early on, I think when people start writing, especially with first drafts and things, is sometimes you have an idea in your head. And it's even just, maybe it's a sentence, maybe it's a phrase, maybe it's, whether you're writing fiction or non-fiction, normally you've got a few things in your head, and often what can happen, and musicians do the same, they've got this one thing that they're like, no, I can't lose this thing. And I think often what happens is when you develop ideas and stuff, you go, actually, this one thing is kind of holding me back. And if I let go of this and move it to a different project, if I, do it in the sequel, whatever, it actually makes this thing I'm doing, this has got a life of its own. And what I've been developing is actually way better without this one thing I am an individual clinging to. And that's what I feel is this whole Superman thing. I just think there could have been so much cool stuff to it. And they just don't give enough time because they're so focused on Zod. And the Zod stuff is awesome. That's the thing. I think that's why a lot of people, like I said, my brother, who's he's born in mid-70s. So he is definitely of this generation of growing up with Superman and stuff. And this is his favorite film, and he loves it. And he said it's all Zod. He's like, Zod is so cool in this film. And I get that. It's like the Zod stuff is so amazing, and the action scenes are really cool. I mean, I know we're jumping all over, but like earlier on the film, the stuff on the moon, which I think is what you mentioned before after I said about the 8-minute recap thing, I think that moon stuff is some of the coolest stuff I've ever seen. Phenomenal.
It's really good. No, I agree. Everything with Zod, Ursa, and Non is good or great. Like none of it is it's campy at times. I'm a little bit confused by some of the powers. They're dressed very disco, but that's fine. It's the late 1980, but it's all good. Like, it works. And this is where I think when I start to parcel this film out, and you say, like, you have Lex Luthor sort of escaping prison with Miss Teschmacher, and you've got that whole journey going on, and okay, that's a tone. And then you go, that's that tone. And then you get the Superman stuff. And you go, well, that's that kind of tone. And then you got the Zod stuff, and you go, and that's that tone. And you sort of go, none of this is consistent. Like none of this, like it's literally like a weird, like each section, and then it comes together, and you go like, oh, it kind of works when they're all together. And then but like up until that point, it really feels kind of there's a disjoint in this, as you said, is evident that's not evident in the first film. That first film is very consistent, and it has like its 3 mini movies. You know, it has like the stuff on Krypton, the stuff as young Superman, young Clark and Superman in Metropolis, right? And works across the board. That's Donna's vision, right? It works. This kind of feels, as you say, like this bit's going to be funny and campy and silly, and then, you know, oh, this bit's going to be this, and then that was going to be like, oh, now we're going to have drama, and it's going to feel like, you know, weighty, and then we're going to go to the moon. It feels really weirdly. You can tell this is 2 or more visions, and that comes to, I think, this is where it's kind of worth probably pointing out, like what was going on, because it's multiple visions, and that's kind of like where it starts to fall apart, and not fall apart, but that's where the cracks, I think, appear.
Yeah, and it's such a shame, really, because I wonder if they hadn't done the power stuff, if they had saved that for Superman 3. If, again, I've not seen Superman 3, and I plan to watch it once you start releasing these. I'm going to plan to watch Superman 3, so I can listen to your pod of Superman 3 and Superman 4. But like, it is such a shame, because I just think there was such a good idea there, but it just kind of was in the first draft stage, which is really upsetting to me. But I was trying to rack my brain of whether or not I prefer this film or the other one, because I think I do prefer the first one. I think it's got more rewatchability without the cracks being obvious. It just it really builds, and I think each act is better than the last, and it works very well as like a 3-act kind of structure. But I think this one is kind of like, the first act's really good and the last act's really good, but the second act is like, what the fuck is happening?
Yeah.
And it's just quite upsetting in certain respects, because I'm just looking at some of my notes and stuff, and I'm just like, all of my favorite bits that I'm noting down from the middle part, sort of post Niagara Falls, all of it, is just what Zod's up to. And it is a bit of a shame. But out of interest, I don't know if I'm skipping ahead, but like, do you prefer the original Superman, and do you think that they just progressively get worse of these 4? I know the third and fourth are considered quite bad, but do you just think that, or do you prefer this one? Because I know this one is, I think Reeves has said since the drama kind of fizzled, he prefers this one. And I think this is generally considered the best one.
Some people do think of it like this is the better, this is the better film. I think I think this is easier to digest. And I think it's easier to digest because it's, as you said, it's a superhero film. Yeah, this is a superhero film. It's got all those beats that we recognize as being a superhero film. It ends with the punchy. You're going to have the sort of the low, with the superhero's going to be at their low point. They've got to step up and all this sort of stuff, right? Zod and the guys are great. It's got some funny moments. It's got some it's got some darkness. This film some of the violence in this stuff I've forgotten. I was like, oh my god, this is kind of violent and kind of dark in a sort of comic booky way. I think the first film is a little bit like The Godfather. That's a weird comparison to make, but it's such a complete piece, that first film, from start to finish, and it's so sort of well balanced across the board. And even watching back, and I think back on it, and I'm like, even as we talked about, there's bits that I kind of think maybe a bit too campy, or there's this and that. But like overall, as a piece, I just think it works so incredibly well. And even like it ends with that sort of the smile from Christopher Reeve as he sort of swaps. It's so sort of like such a great ending. If that was the only Superman film they ever made, I think it'd be like that's a suit. It recognizes what Superman is. And so I think that's why I think I prefer the first one. But this one's definitely more digestible in that sense of like you could just bang this one on and go, oh, I love watching this bit and that bit, And
I think this for me, Star Wars comparison number 2. This for me is more like the prequels, and the Superman one's more like the original trilogy. The original trilogy, especially the first Star Wars film, that's its own thing. It's its own film. You either watch Star Wars and New Hope, or you watch the trilogy. And it works really well. Yeah, there's a few flaws and a little bit inconsistencies, but as a whole, it works really well. You don't have to really apologize when explaining how good original trilogy is. when you watch the prequels, as you and I know, because we did the comics on trial debate, is I adore the prequels because I think the highs of the prequels, for me personally, are higher than almost anything in the original trilogy, personally. The original trilogy is like 7, 8 out of 10, a couple of 9 moments. The prequels is like 6 in general, a couple of 2s or 4s, but 3 scenes that are like 9 or 10 out of 10. Yeah. Darth Maul, 10 out of 10. In episode 3, the Order 66 and the Mustafar stuff, 10 out of 10. But you have to get through the Anakin Padme love stuff and Attack of the Clones. That's shit. Yeah. And I feel like in this film, it's not dissimilar to that because I think that the moon stuff, like genuinely 10 out of 10. I was blown away how good it looks. And I was watching on Now TV, so it's 4K restored and stuff. And it looks, I was trying to look.
It looks amazing. I watched on 4K as well. It's amazing.
I was trying to see, I was trying to actually genuinely look for the strings of how they were doing it. And I was like, I can't see them. I was like, the moon stuff is some of the best moon space stuff I think I've ever seen. And this was made like 45 years ago. And then the action scenes in the city, in the small town with Zod and stuff, when they like do the arm wrestling thing, when Ursa like beats, like smashes the table and then punches that guy and he goes through like 2 walls and the truck. I was like, this looks incredible. It feels so like you don't use CGI, overuse it, because at this point they barely could use it. There's a couple of dodgy CGI bits in this. The flying doesn't look quite as good as in the first.
Oh, the sort of the backgrounding, like
the lighting they haven't quite got down, but that I'm fine with that. But because of the use of practical effects, when someone gets punched through a wall, if someone is physically being thrown through a wall, it's made out of styrofoam or whatever, but I love that bit where he gets punched through loads of stuff. But nowadays, when someone gets punched through a wall, it doesn't really often look like someone's being punched through a wall. And then the city stuff as well, I felt like it went on for ages, the scene, and I was like, this just feels like they've got a writer's room of like, here's every idea we can think of to put in a city, and most of it looks really great and feels really cool, and there's so much to it. And I'm like, these action scenes still hold up today. They're so good. And I was like, by the end of the film, I was like, I get why people love this so much. But it's just like, you do kind of have to wade through a little bit of the crap. And it's hard. It's a weird thing for me to feel with this film. I didn't expect it.
No, I know what you mean. That middle bit is there's a lull. There's a definite lull. But you do get these peppered bits. And we want to talk about the bit on the moon. The bit on the moon is fascinating because this is 1980, and it's both astronauts and cosmonauts, so Russian and American, people on the moon together. So like positive, like Superman sorted out the Cold War apparently, and
the space race, which is like a major part of the Cold War.
That's right. So it's all sorted apparently, and so but I like to say the introduction is. And you get all the usual stuff. They talk in space, that doesn't happen, and all that kind of stuff. Let's not quibble on those kinds of things. But it's kind of creepy as well because they're sort of like they have this thing of, like I said, the flying on screen in set. Let's say looks really good. I think it's better than the first one. But then you have like Ursa fly. She flies past, and it's like someone's like, I saw a girl, and they get cut off from Houston, and they call it Planet Houston and stuff like that. But then you're like, oh. So they're like these 3 astronauts and cosmonaut. When they're killed, like it's brutal. Like one of them just has like the windpipe sort of ripped out of his suit, and you see him sort of expand and stuff, and they burst. Then another, then they crush the spacecraft, and like Non just basically just destroys it. Like it's really kind of brutal. It really is. And I was kind of like, oh my God, like, and that brutality sort of carries on, and it works because I like the fact that it consists of basically Zod and Ursa more than none, a complete dismissiveness. Like they're completely sort of like, humans are just sort of, nothing to them. And so you feel like there's, when I get to sort of Batman v Man of Steel and stuff, that Michael Shannon one is so focused on Superman, Kal-El, that you're like, oh, okay. But this one kind of feels like there's more of a sort of perverse menace to Terrence Stamp's Zod. Like he kind of takes a pleasure in doing some of this stuff, 'cause it's all about that pageantry, kneel before Zod and all that. he'll happily like pull the heads off someone if he wanted to. Like they're limited by the this is a kid's film.
Yeah.
But, like that this is because someone's gone. Zod would kill people just for the fun of it. Like yeah. And I've got no doubt about that.
Really.
And boredom. Yeah.
That's the scary thing is when people would murder out of boredom. Not dissimilar to Javier Bardem in No Country. Just no connection whatsoever. People were just vaguely in the way.
We are insects to them. Like there's nothing different to us stepping on ants or a spider or something. And the same with Ursa, like her collecting the badges. That's the other one that kills, and she rips the badge off, and then she starts collecting like the sheriff's badge, and she starts collecting. I love that concept where she's just like, these are the things I've defeated.
Yeah,
they're mine now. Like that's sort of. So it's they just they have a gravitas to them, and they kind of want to bring through the comedy of none. But works. I think it works. And so it works in that way for me that like you see the menace and it's all small scale, isn't it? It's all kind of small, and you go, oh, okay, well, that's whatever. They attack the White House, and you're like, okay, it's kind of like fine. But that street scene in Metropolis at the end, where they basically like throw a bus into Superman and stuff and all that stuff, and he's like, no, don't say the people. It's brilliant. It's all perfect. I mean, it looks old, like old special effects. It's all practical and stuff. But I love this concept that like they think they've beaten Superman, and then all of a sudden, I'm a glutton for this, right? There's a film cliche that I am an absolute glutton for. And I will always fall for it. And if you've ever seen the Amazing Spider-Man,
yeah.
So the Andrew Garfield one, like, there's a bit in that where he's injured and he's got to get to Gwen Stacy, I think, and said this, and all the cranes in New York start lining up because he's a New Yorker, right?
Yeah.
And then they have it in one of the, I think it's they do it in the Maguire Spider-Man as well, where they start throwing something at the Green Goblin. All the New Yorkers are protecting him. I kind of love that kind of thing where people sort of rally behind the hero.
Yeah.
Because then the regular people are the heroes. Superman's gone, and you've seen what these people do, and all of a sudden it's like, fuck that, let's get him. And all of a sudden, like all these Metropolitans going like, no, we're going to take these on. I watched it with subtitles on because I was just
same. Yeah.
And there's someone in the back who goes, let's get them. I know judo. And I'm like, it's not going to help much, is it?
I don't think it's going to help you, mate. I think you could be one of the best judo practitioners in the world. Even if Non wasn't super, you'd have a pretty tough time throwing that guy around. Yeah, I love that as well. I'm a sucker for, I think especially when it's an end scene of something. I feel like you get that a little bit in Spider-Man 2 when his mask comes off and all of it opens a bit of a
on the
pothole,
train.
But but they pass him and they're like, no, he's just a kid. Can you see what he did for us? We just need to protect him. And there is definitely room in the superhero world to have the kind of the Alan Moore superheroes, which is they're going to fuck everything up and they're actually quite problematic. But there's also the ground level sort of Spider-Man sort of style, which is they're there to help people, and people in their everyday life are helped by this being, this person. And I think I'm a real sucker for it as well. I love it when it's kind of Bug's Life sort of thing in a concept where it's like you've got this big evil thing that you couldn't beat by yourself, but if you all rally together, you might stand a chance. And normally you wouldn't stand a chance, but it's almost just enough time to get the one big goodie, to get that last punch in, to get that last thing in.
Yeah.
And it's kind of that thing that makes you hope for humanity, where you go, I think if there were one or two superheroes, not talking about the boys where there's like a billion now, I'm talking like one or two, I think that we would get a world where you'd have critiques of it, but generally most people would really be behind a character like Superman. I think the more you get, then it gets complicated and stuff, but I love that. And I feel like the scenes, although I do feel like the action scenes in the city did go on for a little bit long, I loved it. And I'll tell you what bit I loved, and it's a bit campy and stuff, is when they're blowing.
Yeah, that's it.
That looks so good. I no pun intended, I was blown away by how good it was. I was like, and it goes on for quite a while, but I was like, this is really cool. Like watching how the actors are having to pretend to be, obviously got giant fans or whatever, but like being blown away. That guy on the roller skates is amazing. Like him that zooms backwards, like that kind of level of clever campiness. It feels like Sam Raimi, he was inspired by that kind of thing because Sam Raimi's Spider-Man, although they are primarily serious, you've got these little moments of campiness, mainly with Bruce Campbell, that don't take away from the seriousness of certain elements of the movies. And I think the Avengers movies as a whole, they struggle a bit because they're kind of like, we need this many quips, we need this many funny bits. And it's you don't need a main character to make a joke when something really fucked up is happening, really out of character. What you kind of need is maybe a moment where, if people are getting blown away by this giant gust of wind, someone's hairpiece is going to fall off.
Yeah.
If someone is on roller skates,
ice cream. Yeah. It's the ice cream that goes
in I love that bit. It cracked me up. Like little things like that, it doesn't take away, and they are actually, to a degree, in realism.
Yeah.
But the one bit of that whole scene that really I couldn't understand is that guy on the phone who's like maniacally laughing. I just didn't get it. I don't know if I missed a joke or something, or I was just like, what? And it was on him for ages. I was like, what is happening? Well, I don't know. And it was gone and never mentioned again. I was like, okay.
I think it was supposed to be like he's so engaged in his phone call, he's not seeing what's going on around him. But like the way they've done it, it looks weird. Like, it's like, it doesn't make any sense. I was a bit like, it's the first one I noticed that where I'm like, oh, I do want to actually let's talk about this sort of scene because we have been going on. We know the things, right? So you've got like, and I do love it. You're right because it escalates as well, and it's all miniatures. I love miniatures. So you get cars flowing around and all that stuff. It looks cool. They proper mess up the place. Superman climbs out from underneath the bus, and everyone's sort of like, and also they've had the front of like the Daily Planet ripped out, and that's cool. So they're all watching out from a space. And then Superman sort of like staggers a bit, and then flies off, and everyone's like, Superman, no! And he's a coward. Why did he fly off? Right now, what ends up happening is they follow him. He doesn't know that because they don't do that straight away. What actually happens is Lex Luthor suggests we follow him. So did Superman run away?
Yeah, because when that first happened, I rewound it a bit. I was like, have I missed something? Yeah. I was giving it my full attention, but I was writing notes, so there might be the odd second or so I missed. But when I was like, and he does just fly away, and I'm like, because by the end, when he was, as you said, when he's in Forest of Solitude and stuff, it's like, oh, okay. And he does make a comment about, it's seemingly like vaguely kind of his plan almost, but it was like, it didn't, you're right, it didn't feel that way. I was getting, I find if I was getting Dragon Ball Z vibes. I used to love watching Dragon Ball Z and stuff. And there's quite a few scenes where Goku is very much, I think, like inspired by this type of Superman, or at least maybe what this is trying to tell, which is don't fight near a city. I'll fight you, big bad evil super thing that can shoot beams at your face. But we need to do it over here in the desert, away from stuff. And I think, and again, with the villains in this doing a really good job of like targeting the people, and that's how you beat Superman at the end of the day. That is his weakness. But yeah, I couldn't, when I rewound it, I was trying to think about it. I was like, how did he know? Because Zod's whole thing is talking about, taking over the human race. That's where he went to the White House. That's where he did everything. Yeah. And so Zod isn't, in this iteration of Zod, is not, he needs to be the champion of the world to beat Superman. He just wants to rule everything.
Yeah.
And he didn't even really know about Superman until the president says about it. And then he's like, fine, if he wants to come, he can, but I'm going to keep ruling anyway. So you are a bit like, if Superman did just fly away and run, then
there's no
what would have happened?
Well,
they would have just controlled Metropolis, surely.
Yeah, if they hadn't have followed, like, what would have happened? Like, they could have just turned around and been like, I'm going to start tearing the heads off people just for the fun of it.
Murdering everyone.
Yeah, and like, does Superman come back? Like, there's no acknowledgement of, like, if he climbed out and looked around and saw, like, all the people were injured and was sort of like, oh, this can't happen here, and then challenged them and flew off. Like, yeah, all right. I would buy that.
Yeah, like taunt them and flies or something. Yeah. Like that. Like, Zod, you're so weak, you can't do anything. This is why you're banned from Krypton. And like has a little scuffle and then tries to, that would have made sense. But yeah, as you say, there's that weird middle bit.
Yeah, it just doesn't kind of like, because they go then to the Daily Planet and it's almost like, we also have to have Lex and Lois there as well. So we have to have this other bit. And you're like, yeah, but in doing so, you kind of, you're basically making Superman look like Zod's right. He's a coward. He runs away. There's no other way of looking at it. So yeah, I don't know. It's he runs away from fights in this one. It's weird. It's funny because you say about the hope and this thing about running into going into places where there are no civilians and all that sort of thing. And that becomes a bit like a superhero trope, isn't it? Again, like, it's the whole point of it's basically what drives Batman v Superman.
Yes,
at the end of the day. This also, I am convinced, is what inspired Alan Moore. You mentioned Alan Moore and go in that direction. So you have Alan Moore wrote Whatever Happened to the Man of Tomorrow, and Alan Moore's not at this point not the most hopeful of writers. Like, he's obviously very sort of poetic, and he has his views, and he'll go on and do his Saga of the Swamp Thing, which is beautiful in many respects. But he'll also do Miracle Man, which is his take on Superman. And I know you've now read Miracle Man, and I adore Miracle Man. I think I honestly think it's better than Watchmen as a deconstruction of the superhero. But in the end of book 3, when Kid Miracle Man comes back, and he's like, how do I get Miracle Man to come and get me? I'm going to start fucking up London and just starts decimating the place. And then Miracle Man turns up, and they have the fight. And there are 2 scenes in that like every time I read it, I'm just like, this is insane. One of them is when he sort of first turns up, and you have like Kid Miracle Man sat there, and it's sort of like just the bodies are strewn everywhere, and it's just like,
yeah. I remember the body of someone like on Big Ben. Like, he's just torn someone apart and just left their innards all over Big Ben and like corpse of stuff.
Yeah, and it's horrific. Like, it's Gary Leach did the art, and it's it's brilliantly drawn, but like, it's like, oh my god, like, this is what a supervillain could do if they wanted to. Like, the level of decimation they could do. But then when the fight starts, the next scene that really is like, Miracle Man's so into the fight and so sort of trying to stop Kid Miracle Man that he grabs a car and starts pummeling Kid Miracle Man with it. And the word says, like, Miracle Man grabs the car, says, not knowing there was a family of 4 in it. And like, you're like, even Miracle Man is just sort of like, that's the fight. Like, even he is killing people unintentionally, but that's what a superhero battle in a city is. And so I kind of, you sort of feel that with this, that they want to show you the destruction, the decimation, and the what can be done, but then you also feel like the limitations, not just the special effects, but they're like, it's still a kids' film, so they can blow things over. But I'm also going, yeah, they could also just level this city.
With a laser vision, like, easily, like, or just fly. Like, they're basically invulnerable. If they just flew 3 of them in a row, just up and down, it wouldn't take them that long to level everything very easily. Yeah, it is odd, some of the choices.
Well, it always feels restrained, doesn't it? It feels like that they're holding back. I mean, first it's 1980, but also they're like, this is a kids' film. We can't have Zod just run like killing people with his laser vision, his laser eyes, or lifting people up with his finger, which I still don't quite get, and then just drop it, because you would, wouldn't you? Go, I'm going to grab all these people and take them up to the top of the building, let them go.
Yep, and watch Superman potentially try and get them all, or if not, just who cares?
That's it. Raining people, like,
pick up whole buildings, shake it almost, and just as it's crumbling and stuff. Like, there's so many horrendous things one could do, and it is just, it is a bit odd, because I even wrote down my note. I literally wrote, Superman flees, then the trio take Lex and Lewis to the fortress, and I'm just like, I don't get why they took them. It's like, we'll take Lois as the handicap, and the whole fight when they get there, they're like almost forgot about her. Yeah, because I almost wrote down at one point, I was like, have they forgotten about Lois? And then right at the end, they use her as a handicap, and I was like, okay, I know I'm jumping again, but like, what annoyed me is one of the worst scenes, in my opinion, the first film, is that whole Lois flying scene where she's like touching his feet. But then in this, they're like, no, forget that, because Lois is like holding the back of Non, screaming and stuff. I'm like, you established in the last film that you can just vaguely be like touching someone with your tiny finger and flying. So why are you screaming and so worried? You could literally hold her to a shoestring and fly. Yeah,
but this feels more realistic.
Oh, 100%.
When she's sort of clinging to the back of Non.
100%.
Like, no, that feels much more like what would happen.
Yeah.
No, I agree. And then obviously they do end up at the Fortress of Solitude, and we get this kind of, I mean, I'll draw a line of this thing in a bit, but The end fight in this, again, kind of limited by the choreography and some of the special effects, but it's such a weird fight.
It is. None of it makes any sense. None of it. There's so many weird things happening. There's loads of Superman now. Yep. And no, there's not. Oh, the Cellophane S. Yep. And no, there's not. And even the turn of it is really weird. And I'm like, I almost found it hard to follow at points. I was like, what is happening? I know what the end's going to be because they're not going to kill Superman in his own film, especially the second one. But I'm like, what is going on?
Yeah. I mean, the only thing in the end is the use of the molecule chamber to give him powers. That's the only thing where you go, oh, that was foreshadowed. Chekhov's molecule chamber. All right, I'll go with that. The Cellophane S, I don't understand it in the slightest. And then they can teleport, and not just teleport, they can teleport and become multiple versions of himself. All of these powers, none of them used at any other point in the film or any other film. This feels to me, this is the point I'll make, is this feels like Silver Age and Golden Age comics. This is that kind of 50s to 60s era of comics where they were just sort of it's kid stuff, no one cares. It can be weird. It doesn't matter until you get superhero like Superman powers. He can produce a teeny version of himself out of his palm, or he can levitate, or he can do this, or he has multiple rainbow colors of his suit for some purpose now, or whatever the story's going to be. And obviously that was completely peppered with Lois doing ridiculous things to prove that Clark Kent was Superman and that sort of thing. It all feels like that. But from a modern eye, I'm watching this and going none of you do know that how to write a film. You have to establish power sets at the beginning, and that's the whole point of the scene in Paris. You have a scene at the beginning to remind you, oh yeah, that's the powers they have. Okay, that's what they can do, and then you use them throughout the film.
Even with everything with Zod and Ursa and stuff, is aside from her being bitten by a snake and being hurt by that, which doesn't make any sense at all. If ignoring that weird bit, it's basically just they can fly, they have laser vision, they have cold breath, and they're super strong and super fast. I'm like, okay, fine, easy to understand. You don't need to do too much suspension of disbelief because it's a superhero film. But then, in the last 15 minutes of the film, there's more powers on show than there are in the previous entire movie and prior film.
Yeah,
apart from the turning back time thing. And I'm like, but why? Because when I saw the teleport thing first, I thought, oh, is this super speed? And it's just kind of budget restriction, the way the Flash is, and it's kind of maybe that's it. But then it's pretty evidently not. And I was like, okay, right. And again, as you say, if they could do this, why wouldn't they just do this when fighting Superman in the city? What, doing all the teleporting thing? Surely, why would they ever? This again, the thing of teleporting and stuff. Why would they ever fly anywhere or move, even walk anywhere if you could just kind of teleport over there? If it doesn't seem to take any effort or energy in any way. And if I was writing this, I'd have gone, okay, what's happened is. If Lois, all she needs to say is, how did you do those weird powers? And he goes, when I got my powers back, there's some residue radiation or something, and I can do some things I didn't realize I could do, but I think that's gone now. And you'd go, okay, that's bullshit, but it makes vague, coherent sense. But they just don't reference it, and you're like, did you watch the edit of when they finished the film after the final edit, even after the potentially Frankensteining it together? When you watch this scene and you look at it and go, it just doesn't make any sense at all. And there's no reason. There's not a cool fight scene where the cool factor, which Marvel do sometimes, where they're or Star Wars do even, where it's this looks so cool, we're going to forget the other stuff because we just want this cool scene. This scene is not cool.
It's not cool.
It doesn't look good. And it doesn't make any sense.
No. It kind of this is the point. This is why I think I also prefer the first film. The ending of this film kind of falls apart for me, where I'm they're just kind of whatever needs to happen to defeat thingy. And the only thing I like is when they lose their powers and Lois Lane gets to punch out Ursa.
I love that bit. I love that bit.
Yeah. And I like the fact they're do you know what? You're a real pain in the neck. And I thought she was gonna be you know what? You're a real bitch. And I was like, oh man, I think it's there's bits that look good, but there's some bits you just sort of head scratching. It's gonna get worse. And if you thought, all right, having watched the first film, that Superman zooming around around the Earth to reverse the rotation of the Earth in order to save Lois. Because he's not going to do that to save any of the people that were just killed by Zod. No. So, we're not doing that again. But he does need to make sure that Lois Lane forgets all this, because she has this conflicting thing now of being able to share Superman with the world, right? And again, this is the only time this conversation comes up where she's like, "Oh, I sat up all night crying because you had to go off and do stuff." And he's like, she's like, "I'm so selfish." And he's like, "No, you're not selfish at all." And I'm going, "No, this is the literal definition of selfishness."
Oh yeah,
like no, she's very selfish. Don't be an idiot. Like, stop making excuses for this woman. Like, this is even she acknowledges she's been selfish. Like, don't pander to her. And so he decides to kiss the memories away, which is probably like the most rapey thing possible. And I was like,
the chloroform kiss.
Yeah, I was like, that does not sit well with me.
No.
Superman's able to kiss away memories. And I'm like,
Yeah, it's also like that. When I saw some of the comparison videos and things after watching this, someone's pointed out there's actually, weirdly enough, there's a framed photo of Bill Cosby in that scene in the background, which is so weird.
Yeah, no, he's there throughout. I wanted to mention this. I was like, is that Bill Cosby? Because it turns it's not just in that scene. It's, often you have like an office building and have like, here's the president or something. It's there throughout. When Perry White is giving a speech earlier on in the film, it's on the wall. Like, it's just there in the scene. And you are going like, are they trying to, are they saying something? Did they know in 1980?
It's so weird, but yeah, the kiss, and it opens again memory erasing stuff. It really, I think when you erase someone's memory of a day, you can go, okay, that's fair. Maybe a week, maybe.
Yeah.
But when you get anything beyond that, the ramifications just don't make sense. It happens in Harry Potter, and I always criticize it in one of the last films. Hermione erases her parents' entire memory of her existing. And I'm like, you've been alive for like 20 or 18 years. You cannot erase that from someone. No. It's not possible, because there's
the complexities. Well, it's not just the parents. It's like, your neighbors, your family, your friends.
The mailman, your name is on stuff. There's things upstairs you've written in. And then with the Superman stuff, back to this, it's just like, so the whole Niagara Falls thing, what would she remember about that? That she was there? Does she forget the whole experience of Niagara Falls? Or does she just forget from the moment that Superman revealed himself? So what does she think happened with her and Clark from there to the Forest of Solitude? Because she had sex with him as well.
This is where, she's like, I've got stains all over this dress. What the hell happened here? Like, there's a period at the end. The joke is that she sits down, she orders a hamburger, and Clark goes and gets it and stuff. She's like, isn't he a nice guy? And she says to Lurleen, she's like, so what's happening in the world? And like that, the woman rolls her eyes because of everything that's just happened and the fact that the front of the planet's, the Daily Planet's still missing.
Yeah.
If she was a good journalist, at some point she's going to look at something and go, that's not right. The calendar says the 15th. It should only be the 8th. And someone's going to go, no, it's the 15th. She's going to go, I've lost 7 days.
Yeah, and they're like, do you not remember being taken away by Superman and all this kind of stuff?
Yeah.
And, no.
And so if she, this is Lois Lane. She's lost 7 days. Who is she going to turn to help solve that mystery?
Well, we have probably Clark Kent. And
Superman.
And probably Superman as well. But you're like, what's happened?
What's he going to say to her? Like,
I think the only thing is knock your head. That's the only thing I can think of is you bashed your head.
You've been in a coma. Yeah,
like when you got taken away by Zod and Co, you bashed your head, you forgot a lot of stuff, but it's okay, you're fine now. I guess. But again, you just go, I know, again, part of it is, which we'll get onto as we're nearing the end of this part, but like we got to talk about the different versions of it. But it's really problematic. It's really confusing as to how it happens. It doesn't really make sense. And it really, I think it cheapens, again, Superman and also Lois Lane, because Superman's whole thing is meant to be doing things for saving the little guy, but also a lot of it is kind of greater good kind of thing, which is like, you've got to suffer sometimes to really deal with these things. Lois Lane, her whole crying and being selfish thing, it's okay to have those emotions, have those feelings. That's a very common thing with like Mary Jane with Spider-Man. It's like, you prioritize being Spider-Man over me. I never know if you're going to come back. I have to keep, cleaning the blood out of like this and stuff like that is quite a common thing with someone who's in a relationship with a super. That's fine. But the fact that she's really making him feel so bad about it.
Yeah.
And it's like, he didn't ask us. You figured this out. You pressured him. You threw yourself in Niagara Falls to kill yourself almost to prove a point. And you do all this. And when you're finally proven right, you're like, can't cope with this. You made me feel like shit. And it's like, you literally spent a good chunk of this entire movie specifically trying to prove this point. Yeah. And now that you're correct, you're now making him feel guilty when he specifically didn't want to tell you, which undermines her as a character.
Yeah.
And Lois Lane, I was so surprised.
She comes out of this film looking really bad.
Yeah. And I said to you, like in the first film, she actually, I was surprised by how much of a strong, independent, clever woman she is, because in this era, a lot of the time you didn't get those kind of characters, you know. And then in this film, you're just kind of like, oh no, this is almost the kind of negative interpretation I would have expected. But because the first film didn't do that at all, you just go, what are you doing with this character? I don't know what. But it comes just back to this whole, it's like, we can do the mystery of the next film where she still doesn't know.
But it comes back to this whole thing of not wanting to deal with, like, this is the same thing. Like, Superman says he loves her, so he wants to remove his powers. She's not going to intervene or say anything. We're not going to deal with that. Then he gets beaten up and sees that Zod's come back, so he's going to go get his powers back. But we're not going to deal with that. Like, constantly throughout this film, when it comes to their relationship, like, this is not a relationship. I never consider them that they're in love. She is attracted to and loves Superman. And I personally think that there's more to it. The moment he loses his powers, and she says, like, you know, the moment he gets beaten up, and she says, you know, the man I fell in love with, and he says, oh, it's a shame he's not here.
Yeah,
there's kind of like a realization that, like, no, she loves Superman, not Clark Kent. Like, at no point did she love the boy from Kansas. Like, she loves the Man of Steel. And again, like, not going to address that really. We're going to sort of, you know, lean into that a little, but we're not going to address it. And I'm like, dude, there's so much, like, this is, it's a kid's film, we can't do that. And you're going, but in that first film, you did this whole thing about, like, you know, what it is to save people. You've sort of said about the, you know, he loses his dad and he's going to sort of have that whole thing of not being able to save everyone. Like, you can have some weighty issues and stuff. And in this, you're just going to completely shy away every time that relationship stuff comes up, which is really disappointing.
And I feel like, again, it would be really easy to actually make that work, even though I hate that idea of making her forget. All you need to do is, instead of them being in the Daily Planet, they are there the night when, you know, Metropolis is in tatters and stuff, and they're sat there talking, and she's like, she just has to say, look, I feel like I made a mistake. I thought I wanted to know this. It's too much for me. I really don't like what's happening, all this kind of stuff. And he said, and he could say, look, I could make you forget. Is that what you would want? And she goes, look, I love you. I genuinely love you, Clark. I'm sorry I didn't realize that earlier. And I love you, Superman. But I just don't feel like I can deal with this, with worrying about you. And also, I'm a target now. And even if he maybe brought that up and said, if you are with me, this kind of stuff might happen to you again. And I don't want to lose you. I don't think I can deal with that. And if she maybe said, look, why don't you, because I think it's happened in other films and stuff where it's like, make me forget.
Yeah.
And I will always love you. Don't forget that. And it's going to suck for you, Clark. And I'm really sorry. But if you can make me forget, I won't be a target anymore. And we can go back, and maybe I'll fall in love with you as Clark normally. And maybe there'll be another time where we can come to this. But I've made the wrong decision. Can you please somehow get this out? And he says something like, look, I think I can. I learned about this weird thing we can do in that 18 years he was away and stuff. But I can only do it if you are genuinely willing to do it, and I can make it happen. Yeah. And that could be a really beautiful, really touching, amazing scene that actually grows them both as characters and really makes Superman even greater as a hero, because he makes him
the sacrifice
so much weight. But instead, they're just like, oh, it's really shit you being Superman. It's really upsetting. What have you done to me? And he's like, all right, snog, gone. Yeah. Problem solved. And you're like, what the fuck? Could you imagine if she found out about that afterwards?
Well, that's what I'm
saying. What she would do to him? Like,
well, of course she's out. But of course she's going to find out, because she's an investigative journalist. Like, she's going to go, I have days missing. Here's the stuff that's happened. I'm having reports of these other superhuman beings. I was kidnapped from this very building. Like, what the fuck? Like, I've got tickets to Niagara Falls. Like, you know, I've got, like, I don't know. It feels, it's such a sort of an ending when you go, they think it's funny, but it doesn't. The moment you start scratching away at it, like it feels awful. I'm starting to reread the Gunslinger series, the Dark Tower, Stephen King's Dark Tower series.
Oh yes, yeah.
So I read the Gunslinger. There's a similar thing that happens in that, but it has the weight. There's a character in that, this woman who, when the Roland is in this town and sort of this stuff happens with the Man in Black and stuff, and this one character sort of like has this knowledge of the Dark Tower and all the wider thing, what happens beyond death and all this other stuff. And when he comes back, someone says to him, all you've got to say is this one number. You go, just tell him 17 and he'll tell you everything. And this woman's like, I'll never do it. I don't want to know. And anyway, stuff happens. And all of a sudden, like she turns up to Roland and she's basically like, kill me. He's like, what happened? She's like, I asked. I said the number, and I cannot. And like she goes mad basically. Like, and Roland the gunslinger has to kill her. But there's that thing of going like, it's that thing of idea of like opening Pandora's box. Like you're right. We cannot cope sometimes with certain knowledge, and that's the song. It should be sort of she should be like, you've opened me up to this world. I don't know, as you said, like if I can process this yet. And how do I handle it? And like you say, this whole thing of being a target, and it's like it should be on both sides. It should really be this thing of like, not just that it's easier. In fact, this could be harder for everyone involved, but it's the right thing to do, or the only real choice. I don't know. It just feels. I mean, we did it with in Doctor Who. Tennant had it with
Catherine Tate.
Catherine Tate's character. Yeah.
Yeah, and that scene is like we're rewatching Doctor Who at the moment actually, and we're just getting to we basically have taken a pause because the next episode is just before the Catherine Tate stuff, and it's the Kylie Minogue Christmas special that I hate, and it's like an hour and 75 minutes long, and I'm like, oh god. Doctor Who, controversially, I think is the only show I watch where the Christmas specials, in my opinion, are the worst. But I've not got past Matt Smith stuff, so maybe I'm wrong in the future. But I think that my issue with this film, in a lot of respects, is you touched upon it, and I think you've articulated it perfectly, is literally this film is almost every opportunity Superman takes the easy way out, which is literally the antithesis of him as a character. Yeah. The whole thing is he doesn't take the easy way out. He does the hard stuff so everyone else doesn't have to. He carries the weight of, I remember there's an Action Comics issue where he's holding the world, like a globe above him. That's what he will do. Even the Snyder Superman, for its faults, that's the kind of the Cavill Superman will do that. He will genuinely suffer through everything just to make the world a better place for other people. And Superman 2, they're like, no, he just takes the easy way out without really thinking about it constantly. And you're like, but why? Why do that to him for a cheaper, more boring, and more convoluted plot that makes less sense? There's no payoff for it.
No, and that's it. I think Superman is lesser in this film because of it, in those parts. However, there are still scenes that look like the scenes I love of him are. I think the Paris scene is great. There's a confidence and a smirk and a smile there that I think, because Christopher Reeve is a good-looking dude. Like he looks like Superman. But the one time I really feel like he looks like Superman is and they've got the lighting right and it just looks perfect, is that end piece just before. Well, he's got his powers back and everything, and he flies up to the Daily Planet and says to Zod, like, do you want to step outside? And the way he looks pissed, and he's like, I was like, that is perfect. Like, that's the Superman that I recognize.
The quiet rage.
Yeah.
But held back, whereas Batman's more the overt rage, pushing for it. That's quite one of the things I like about those two characters when they work together. But yeah, the quiet rage of Superman, like holding back. And that's one of the things I love about Spider-Man so much, is what I liked about in No Way Home when Andrew Garfield, after he loses Gwen, and he says, I stopped pulling punches. And you know that in I'm playing this Spider-Man 2 game as well, where that kind of happens with, because symbiote gets involved, and when the symbiote takes Peter in all the iterations, he doesn't hold back as much, and he's so much stronger. He can just kill people, and I love that element. Sorry,
I forget which comic it is, but there's one where he does it to Kingpin, where like Kingpin's been taunting him, and it's sort of like he does something to either MJ or somebody else or Gwen or what I can't remember what it is now, but basically does something, and Spider-Man's just like, I've been holding back all these years, and then just leathers Kingpin, and you're just like, you know that he's always been holding back his punches. Like, he can do incredible things.
To Willem Dafoe, Green Goblin, there's that. It's one of my favorite scenes in any superhero film, which is when Tom Holland starts just beating the fuck out of Willem Dafoe. And Willem Dafoe, is the Green Goblin's just smiling there, and he's like, "Do it, kill me, do it." And the other two Spider-Men are like, "Don't do this, kid. Don't do it." And he's punching and punching and punching and punching. And I'm like, I know you're watching the film even for the first time. You're like, I know he's not going to actually kill him, but you're like, don't go there, Spidey. Yeah. Please hold back. And that's what Superman is, where you've got this unbelievable power behind you that you could destroy everything in your path, but you've got to not do it. And that's the quiet rage of Superman that I've really started to really enjoy with these two films, and the elements of the Snyder Superman that I like, which is having that quiet rage, and when he's pissed, just giving that extra 5%. Yeah, it's still only at like 60%. Is so much darker. I love it.
Yeah. No, and there's a couple of comics that have done that have done it. Really, things like Superman versus the Elite, and a couple of like some of that. Even like Death of Superman, like it's him versus what's it called? Like the Beast, the thing that sort of that ends up killing him in the 90s.
Oh, it's not Apocalypse, Dark Side. I can't remember.
We'll remember. We're terrible comic fans. But yeah, like even that bit, like it's that thing of like he's got to keep fighting. Like this is that thing of like getting beaten up until he sort of can't give any more. Like that's what Superman is. And I kind of feel there's elements of that in this still, but like you say, a lot of the times it takes the easy way out, and it feels silly. And I think that's the shame of it.
It's Doomsday, isn't it?
Doomsday. Thank you.
I blimmin' out. I should have. It's so obvious now. Sorry. Apologies. Yeah.
Yeah. So yeah, no, I think you're right. That's why, and I do like. I still feel that from Reeves Superman. There's that sort of that element there, and there'll be little glimpses of it in the next couple of films. In fact, I would say there's some bits more of it in the sort of the third one. And so yeah, I don't know. But this ending kind of bothers me, to be honest.
It's weird. Lois Lane and Superman is the weakest part of this film.
Yeah,
which is quite sad.
Yeah, let's talk about the Donna cut then, because I haven't seen that for years. Actually, I did a bit of research. You probably did more than I for this actually. So it was a controversy. Almost brought the film to a halt. Richard Lester was brought in to wrap it up, finish it up, and do all the bits and pieces. Got it out, and did gangbusters. I mean, they're so confident in this film, by the way, as well. When it ends, it says Superman 3 coming soon.
I thought that. I was like, God, that's a bit. They barely do that in films nowadays. In MCU, it's just like he'll return. We're not going to say how, so we don't commit. But I was like, God, especially the how troubled the shooting of this was.
That's what I mean.
At the end, you're like, Jesus Christ.
Yes. Everyone's going, what did we just go through? Doesn't matter. We'll be back in a year. All right, we'll do that.
And didn't they also? I know we're going to talk about the Donna cut, but I know you're talking about it in the pod you're going to do next. But didn't Lester also leave in like part 3, and then that also had trouble production in some respect?
Every Superman film apart from the original has weird controversy around it.
Okay, we'll dive into that more because I want to hear you talk about it in the next pod. Sorry, but yeah,
no, you're right. No, there's things like but for 4, like Reeves only did it because it was contractual. Like he was contracted to do it. Like he had no other choice, and it was just, so you can see it in some of his performance where he's just sort of like, no, can't be bothered. Yeah, we'll get there. But yeah, no. So, what's your knowledge? So, what have you found out as you're doing your research then?
Yeah, so there's a lot of back and forth about like why Donna left, but basically he really didn't like one of the producers' sort of best mates. Essentially, he was really heavily involved in it all, and he basically said, "Look, I'll keep doing it, but you need to remove this guy completely." And the main producers were like, "No, you can't. He's a big financer. He's a big part of this." Back and forth, and then Richard Donner had filmed 70 to 80% of Superman 2, and then basically the deadline of Superman 1 was coming up because they were filming them both together, and they said, look, you need to stop this, go back, finish Superman 1. So finish Superman 1, and then before continuing with Superman 2, that's when the whole fallout happened, and then they brought on Richard Lester. And then Richard Lester essentially this bit is different of who you ask, but essentially they're saying that to be the director of a movie, you have to have actually filmed and directed more than 40 or 50% of the film. Apparently,
to get the credit,
exactly. And Richard Donner, because of the falling out, said, "I don't want you to put my name on this film. I don't want any part of this. Remove me completely." And so they had to reshoot quite a few scenes. Lester did, and he did quite a few in the Daily Planet and things like that, which were basically the same. But essentially, they had to reshoot quite a lot of different things, and then because of that, Gene Hackman was so friendly with Donna because of the whole shaving mustache thing. He really respected him, so Hackman wouldn't come back. Marlon Brando, in the meantime, was having a argument with the producers and some other filmy things because he wasn't getting paid enough for the first film. He took them to court on one eventually, so he wasn't coming back. And there was a couple of other people that wouldn't come back either, so they had to.
Which is why it's his mum. Sorry, which is why it's his mum.
Yes, exactly. Because originally in the Donna Cut, I know it's Marlon Brando's in it and stuff like that. And there's also other bits where it's like when they do the reshoots, Christopher Reeve is much bigger and all kind of the haircuts change, all that kind of jazz. So I know about that element, and then the opening scene is different because originally it was meant to be the explosion of the missile from the first film. That was meant to be what blew up the Phantom Zone thing. So they reshot the start of that to make that different. I can't remember exactly what the start of it was, of the Donner Cup, of course, because you've seen the Donner Cut and I haven't. Then there's a few bits and pieces that they tweak that don't necessarily make a huge difference, except the ending. I know what was meant to happen is the ending of Superman 1 was meant to be different. And then the end of Superman 2, he was then meant to do the spin around the world bit. And that would have kind of undone it. And that would have made it organically so that Lois Lane forgot who he is. Which would have made way more sense, in my opinion. But in the Donner Cut, they went, no, because the Donner Cut, they obviously couldn't record anymore and they had to use test footage. And there's a bit where when Lois Lane, there's no Niagara Falls bit where she jumps in there. Instead, she throws herself out of a window in the Daily Planet. Yeah. And he runs down and uses super speed to catch her, which does kind of open up a whole other host of issues.
Because he could teleport.
Well, allegedly, yeah. And I know the ending scene with the fight there, the Superman S and that kind of jazz, that wasn't a part either. There were bits of that different, but those were kind of the main elements that I did. I also realized, sorry, going really far back, I know it's a side thing, but I forgot to mention, when you said about the whole thing of what his dad said, I got a note here saying Jonathan Clark's whole talk means nothing apparently from the first film.
Jonathan Kent's,
I did think that.
Doesn't mean anything.
Yeah, sorry, I forgot to mention that. But yeah, that's basically the main differences was the very start and then the very end. The middle stuff was kind of the same-ish.
Yes, in different order. So the only three things I remember is the beginning, as I said. The idea was that it was a continuation. Very much almost like Lord of the Ringsy. Like these films are all done at the same time and things happen. And I think the idea was because they talk about the son of their jailer. They recognize that Kal-El is the son of Jor-El and all this other thing. And so the idea was that, he was imprisoned by Jor-El into the Phantom Zone in their spinny little disco square. And it was the bomb that he pushes up into space at the end of the first, because there's two nuclear weapons that are fired off across America, aren't there? So it's one of those, as you say, and so if I remember rightly, it's been a while, as you watch it, it sort of cuts into that and you see that going off into space, and it's the explosion that disrupts the Phantom Zone square. And so you're right, almost like the consequences of of Lex Luthor's first plan lead into the consequence, and so it becomes this kind of thing of father and son, of like paying for the sins of the father kind of thing. It's supposed to have that kind of feel. And you say the bits in the middle are all reordered. Not a great deal, but I think there's actually some extra material. I remember there's more in the town. There's something in the town. I can't remember what it is, but there's definitely something else that happens in the town. She shoots
him as well with a gun in the Donner Cut. It's a blank, but she in a hotel to try and prove he's Superman.
That's right. Initially. That's the bit.
Instead of throwing herself in Niagara Falls, she goes to shoot him. Yeah.
And at the ending, you're right. There's less of the sort of the weird silliness, but also because they do turn them human, they do get that bit all remains. But also, it's kind of this film, this version, they get pushed into the mist of the Fortress of Solitude and forgotten about. And you're like, are they like dead? Did they fall to their death? Did they disappear? In the Donner Cut, there's a kind of thing of them being picked up by police, and they've sort of been, the Fortress of Solitude is on a piece of water, and you see them swimming away, and they get picked up by the police. So they're alive and they've been arrested, and I'm like, oh, cool. So it kind of shows that like Superman doesn't kill.
Yeah, whereas in the theatrical release, he basically did kill.
He basically he basically throws them off a cliff into whatever. And so as does Lois Lane. She's like, I'm going to punch someone off the side of a cliff into unknown depths. So that was, and as you say, it sort of somehow I forget the deal, but it does result in him spinning around the earth, and that's the version they have on the film. The Donna cut that was obviously is cobbled together. It's okay. It's not as good because it's cobbled together. I don't think it's as good as the Leicester cut, the theatrical cut. I do think if he'd have finished it and it had all that thing, I think I would feel it as of a piece. You know, I said the first film is of a piece.
Yeah.
I think I would feel exactly the same as the first film. I would feel it would be like it's one big kind of story, more so than it does.
Yeah, could you imagine as well? I saw some people talking about this, which is like there's an alternate reality somewhere where Donna didn't get in the fight. Donna never got fired, didn't get rushed. They pushed the thing back for Superman 1 a little bit. The ending of Superman 1 was different, not the turn back time. Superman 2 was the turn back time thing, and then Donna made Superman 3 and 4. Could you have imagined what we'd have got then? Oh, and like people I've seen have said like that could have been arguably, even if he just made a third one, one of the best trilogies ever. Because the second one, even this disjointed one, it's a pretty good film. It's just, I think the disjointed parts are the main issue, aside from hopefully the losing powers thing would have been more fleshed out. But if he definitely would have got 3 films, and he definitely would have made those 3, and maybe he would have changed his mind and put the Superman losing his power thing in the third one. Who knows? That could have been so cool. I'd have been really, only now getting into these films, I'd have been so chuffed with that. But it is a crying shame in a lot of ways that what happened to this franchise, where it just kind of kept going until it went to nuts.
Well, oh yeah, and I mean, you know, when we get to 4, Quest for Peace, which is like the canon films, which are, you know, I mean, I'm gonna lie, like it's got some fun moments in it. But like, I think if that happened, this is that sliding door thing, isn't it? Like, if Donner had stayed on and achieved what he wanted to achieve, and we got those 2 films, cinema history changes completely. Like, the 80s change absolutely, because Superman was kind of a piece, but like you know, there are no other superhero films in the 1980s. Like, you know, everyone was like they're too expensive.
There's those really crappy Marvel-y ones, aren't there, that are just terrible? But I think it's early 90s actually. The
early
Captain
90s,
America,
yeah. The first ever Marvel film. I mean, you know, there is the Swamp Thing movies, which are kind of different and a bit rough. Then you get Howard the Duck, which I will defend forever and a day.
I've not seen it, and I don't think I want to.
I will always defend that film.
Okay.
Me and Julian are sort of like, you know, that's Power Brothers on defending Howard the Duck. But you're right. No, you know, Marvel was having problems, and so they were selling properties off. And you get like the Red Brown Captain Americas. You have like the Hulk doing the David Banner TV show with Lou Ferrigno. You get the weird Captain America in 1990 with an Italian red skull, which I've got on DVD and is hilarious to watch. Yeah, I think Ronnie Cox is in it as the president, so it's kind of worth seeing. But yeah, like none of that would have happened because superhero films would have become much more of a thing. I think, you know, there'd have been much more paid attention.
Almost would have, but it'd have been the DCU.
The DCU, I think,
the Batman stuff probably would have happened sooner, or with a different director.
I think exactly that's the point. Is I think you'd have had a different director because they were kind of like, you know, with Batman and stuff, they were a bit like. They knew what they wanted to do, but like choosing Tim Burton off the back of, you know, Pee-wee's Big Adventure and Beetlejuice is kind of a risk. And if they're like, no, we want to make money, we've seen what Donna can do with Superman, let's see what, you know, someone else can do. Like, you have a very, very different Batman. You don't get that Batman. You get someone else. And, you know, I don't know. I think the 90s and the 80s become different.
Yeah, it is interesting. But it's also that other parallel universe of like, what if Tim Burton had made? I know there are defenders of the Schumacher Batman films. I don't think they're absolutely well. I think one of them. I think the last one is pretty atrocious. I don't think
Batman and Robin I like Batman Forever.
Batman Forever is flawed, but I get it. I enjoy parts of it. It's quite flawed. Batman and Robin is fucking awful. Dreadful. But I think that's almost the comparison with the Superman films. What I've heard is Superman 3 is generally quite disliked. There's some people that really like it, but it's not like irredeemable. But apparently Superman 4 is just awful, and comparatively to before.
It'll be fun when we get there. Superman 3 has one of the most horrific moments in cinema history. Like, it freaks me out as a kid, which we'll get to. I'm not going to spoil it.
No, because I got to watch that. Yeah. But yeah, it would have changed the history. It's an interesting point. Interesting.
But we have these sliding doors because don't forget, like, DC in particular, more so than Marvel. Like, Marvel's been shipped out to like Sony and to Universal and all that stuff. So they sort of made the Hulk or Spider-Man or whatever, X-Men. At Fox, so you have those kind of things, and they're in little pockets. DC was always with Warner Brothers, and Warner Brothers kind of does different things. So you have Batman, and every time they sort of lock onto something, they'll go, "Oh, that's the one to go for." So like you have like Batman Returns, love both of those. Then they're like, Tim Burton should make a Superman film.
Oh, is that the Nicolas Cage one?
That's the Nicolas Cage one. It was going to call it Superman Forever or something like that. And so, you know, if you've ever seen the test, not so much the test footage, but the costume footage that they put forward with that was going to be, you know, like a lightning suit and all kinds of like weird and crazy stuff. That didn't go ahead. He then sort of had a falling out, so then it went to Schumacher and so on and so forth. But also, like, George Miller of Mad Max fame was due to make a Justice League film in the early to mid 2000s.
Oh, wow.
And all that was being lined up to be like, they had people cast, they were costuming people for like Superman. I can't remember who the hell the cast was, but like they had Batman set up and Superman and stuff. That they were leading to do a Justice, and that all fell apart as well. So there's constantly been like, you know, sliding doors. And obviously then he had like the failure of Green Lantern, and which kind of one of the things that shut down the Miller Justice League. So yeah, DC's history is kind of choppy when it's come to their sort of superhero history.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? Because like Marvel have, since the early 2000s, Marvel have kind of been a bit too safe in a lot of respects. Although they just can't stick the third one. I think it's because the execs, seemingly from what I understand, they do get too involved. X-Men Last Stand is, I don't know what went wrong with that film, but when I rewatch it, I don't think it's as bad as everyone says.
I don't think it's as bad as it is.
I think it is definitely a lot worse than the first two, but I don't think it's like atrocious. And like Spider-Man 3, I'm a defender of that film. I think there is about 40 minutes of shit in that film, but I think the rest of it does really work. But apparently Raimi was basically forced to shove loads of villains in there. And if he
did not want
Venom, I think,
Venom in there. Venom, it was all meant to be about the Green Goblin.
And you can feel that Green Goblin and Sandman actually work quite well. I really like the Green Goblin stuff. I know it's amnesia, blah, tropey stuff, but I really like it. I just think as soon as Venom
it takes that trilogy full circle.
Exactly,
you know?
and it works really
well.
And it's got some really great emotional beats in there with Harry and MJ and stuff. So it's frustrating that it feels like a lot of studio interference seems to be the thing that causes a lot of these faults. But yeah, an alternate universe where we have the DC cinematic universe, and then loads of really weird offshoot Marvel movies that come out of like really big risks and probably big swings and quite a few big misses, but probably a few gems as well. Whereas Marvel, I think, are now clutching at straws and kind of trying to do that now, but they've kind of lost it.
I think it's run out of steam a little bit. But
yeah,
I think really the thing I've learned from when you look back at this, and I think this is a big part of this whole thing with Superman as well. You say about, you know, is it exec involvement or interference, let's say, right? There are certain people that don't get superheroes. They just don't understand them. And I think that's part of the problem. Like you and I, you know, we've read comics, you know, and I know you sort of the kind of person, you'll go deep dive, right? I'm going to do deep dive of Moon Knight. I'm going to deep dive of Venom or like whatever, right? And you'll get that character. You go, that's the essence. I get it, right? I'm going to sort of... And then you'll watch something and you end up with your Star Wars knowledge. Like you can watch something and go, they got it, they didn't, you know, or like that's missed the mark. And when you watch these things, when you watch that first film, the first Superman film, I watch it and go, that's Silver Age kind of Golden Age Superman. Like they got it. Like there's a bit of campiness and stuff in there, but there's an honesty and a sort of
a heart, really.
There's a heart to it. Yeah, it's all about hope, and it's about sort of embracing your role as being a figure of hope for the world. And then beyond that, they go, like, you can see people are getting involved because the money's getting bigger. And they're like, we've got to make this secure. We've got to do this. We've got to have that. We've got to have that. And it's sort of like, all of a sudden, it stops being a vision with someone that wants to tell a story about that character and becomes a franchise machine. And I think that's always the problem with superheroes, because they are so popular that they become a bit of almost like a burden to studios at times.
Yeah, and the creators as well. And then you get someone who's not really into the character, who's just kind of doing it for a payday, or they're thinking, oh, I'll do this and this will launch me into the thing I really want to do. And then that can be a big problem because I think, there are so many passionate comic book fans. And like Snyder, for his faults, okay, I'm a massive defender of the Watchmen movie. Not that it gets that critiques, but generally people for the most part, seem to like it. But I adore Watchmen, adore it. Man of Steel, I think is a bit misguided. I don't hate it, but I think it's misguided. Batman vs Superman does lose me, but I appreciate that Snyder, he does get the characters for the most part. He understands. I really like Batfleck. I genuinely do. And I think that the Justice League thing was the big problem with the Snyder stuff, because obviously he went for a personal tragedy. Whedon got on board and basically made it a film that it wasn't.
But that personal tragedy, was, and it was, I can't imagine the grief and the tragedy that went with it. And I don't wish that on anybody. And I think I think having watched the 4-hour cut,
same, yeah,
right. And again, I will say this. I will say about Snyder, right? I'm not his biggest fan. Right, I couldn't get through any. I got through the cut down Rebel Moon stuff, and
I've not even bothered.
Some of the worst films I've ever watched, but. He has a vision. That's the thing. Going back to the thing, he had a vision. All right.
Yeah.
Whether I like those versions of the characters, they are consistent across his vision, and I go, that's the Snyder vision. All right. Is it for me? Probably not always. That's fine. He goes for a darker, more sort of like he wants a certain more cynical version, regardless of how much hope he thinks he's putting in. But at least there is his vision. That thing of bringing Whedon in, I don't particularly blame Whedon. Right. Whatever came out of him being who he is and whatever he did. That was, again, the same thing. There's a studio taking an opportunity to go, right, this is what Marvel are doing. This is the track. This is what we want. 2 hours or less. Go. Bang, bang, bang.
And not waiting for Zack. If they'd have waited for Zack, and because, the Snyder Cut, I enjoy the Snyder Cut. I'm probably never going to watch it again. Or maybe if I have kids, I might watch it one more time. Yeah. I really enjoyed it when I first watched it. There's that whole massive roundtable we did on Comics in Motion. Genuinely, I loved watching it. It shouldn't be 4 hours. It's self-flagellating and it's got about 1 billion endings. Fuck that. If they'd have waited for Snyder and the execs hadn't been so money, and we desperately need to catch up with Marvel, if they'd have gone, right, look, Zack, you've done so much for the DCU. Take a back seat. We'll just pause this. We'll continue with a couple of other projects. Come in when you're ready and you can finish what you want to do. And then if he'd have made a 2.5 hour movie, maybe a 3 hour movie, and then was allowed to kind of continue being essentially the executive producer, the Feige / Jon Favreau of the DCEU, the whole environment would have changed and probably for the better. Yeah. He got pulled away and then they're like, right, Aquaman is kind of Snydery, but actually quite Avengers-y. That didn't work. Wonder Woman was quite Snydery, but worked in its own way. And then Wonder Woman 2 was just fucked. And you're like, all of these disjointed parts, as you say, is execs interfering, not being patient. I think that's the biggest thing. They went, Warner Brothers, like, we spent so much money on this. It's like, you're fucking Warner Brothers. Yeah. Like, you can afford it. What they did with that Looney Tunes live action movie that I was actually quite hyped for, they've just wrote the whole thing off as a tax write-off. They've completely binned Batgirl, even though it was like 90% done. And you're just like, insane. What the fuck are you doing? And you're questioning why people haven't got faith in your studio. And you keep saying you're creating these massive universes and destroying them. And it drives me nuts.
I think the thing is, again, sliding doors thing of all these things, look back at them and it does go back to this. I think it does all come back to this set of films. Mm-hmm. Is this idea of studio interference and stuff and patience. And I think one of the problems is it goes one of two ways. The 80s, things have changed a little bit, but the 80s in particular was more about diminishing returns. Studios knew that. So budgets always got less, right? So if you look at quick, dirty horror films like, the Halloween series or Friday the 13th or anything like that, they're like, okay, we know that each of these is going to get seen less, so we're going to spend less money on it, but we need to get them out because we know we can still make money off them. That was the thing. And I think that was the lesson that got learned. And as you sort of see with the Superman films, that kind of plays out a little bit where they're like, we can't spend all the money we did on the first film, so we've established that, so we can do lesser films because we're still running on the goodwill of that film. So they expect diminishing returns. The modern model, and you mentioned Avengers, which I think is an interesting sort of touch point, is they all want the Avengers money. And everyone always says that they want Avengers money. They don't want Captain America money. They don't want Thor money. They want Avengers money. And so that's the thing when they're going even like Batman v Superman, you can see they're going, we want Avengers money. this is Batman v Superman. This should be like a $2 billion film. And you're going like, cool, all right, well, we'll talk about it. You cut 30 minutes out of it to make parts of it almost incomprehensible. And, you know, there's other parts that I have feelings around Snyder and his approach to things. But like when you watch the extended cut, you go, oh, okay.
Yeah.
That's what okay, now I get it. And then you read, well, why did those 30 minutes get taken out? Could they genuinely make it a better film? Oh, because with those 30 minutes, they actually lose 3 screenings a day. You go, what do you mean? Well, if they lose those 30 minutes, they can have more screenings per day, which means more money. I'm scratching my head and going like, I'm sorry, like that's literally, it's all money driven, and it's those sorts of things that drive you insane. So
and also a little, I know we're coming to the end here, but also like the marketing stuff, you know, Batman vs Superman. Oh my God, Wonder Woman's in it. Okay, we've now ruined a complete reveal, and she's on screen for about 5 minutes. Yeah. We showed Doomsday in the trailer, so we know where it's all going to. So the whole Batman vs Superman fight has no dramatic tension because you know they're both going to fight Doomsday at the end. So you literally ruin your own film. And annoyingly, Marvel, for a while, Marvel weren't doing this. And then, have you seen Captain America 4?
Brave
New World?
I have. Yeah. I liked it.
I enjoyed the film. I thought it was good.
It was good.
Good. 7 out of 10.
Yeah.
It could have been, if the marketing wasn't so fucking irritating, it could have been an 8. Because the whole, I said this on so many podcasts, apologies to listeners who listen to my other stuff. When I booked the film, the poster on the website of the thing is a giant red Hulk fist punching Captain America's shield. But the whole plot of the film, for about 3/4 of the movie, is meant to be a build-up to a thing which, obviously, us comic book nerds, we know General Ross becomes Red Hulk, but a normie audience, which is a decent chunk of the MCU audience, wouldn't actually know that. And they'd be like, oh, Gamma stuff. Oh, there's a weird guy that some people may recognize from Incredible Hulk. I didn't. And like, oh, what's this? These pills he's taking. What's going to happen to him? What is going to happen? Oh my God, there's a Red Hulk and he's fighting Cap. That all dissipates. And when you're watching the film, the entire time, consciously or unconsciously, you're going, when's Red Hulk going to pop up?
Yeah.
Oh yeah, he's taking those pills. Was obviously going to turn into Red Hulk. And the marketing of the whole film completely ruined it. I want to completely ruin it. Really fucked it up quite a bit. Even though I try to avoid certain things. Even the poster, you could not avoid knowing Red Hulk was there, and if someone else bought the tickets for you, and you put your blinkers on going into the cinema. I saw buses that had it on, and it's just so frustrating because there's so many films nowadays where marketing ruins it, and that's studios ruining their own films just to try to get butts in seats.
2 final things I'll say on this whole point, because obviously I'm moving on to somebody else for 3, so I like to finish off and with you and I, because we have some great conversations. The Red Hulk thing is a fascinating point in bad marketing, and I completely 100% agree with what you're saying. What I find funny is I watched something, and this was sort of like a person involved in it, and he was talking about what Anthony Mackie said when he said about Captain America isn't just American, like he defends the world, like, and he's not. I can't remember what exactly he said, but it kind of echoed what Chris Evans has always said, like, Cap's bigger than just America. And I love the character of Captain America, and I like Chris Evans' interpretation of it, and I like Anthony Mackie. I think his version of Sam Wilson has been cool. I'm a fan of all of them.
Agree.
So I was like, cool, all right. One of the things they revealed was the moment that hit, and the conservative side of America sort of like rallied against it, it stopped being a Anthony Mackie Captain America film and became a Harrison Ford film. And they were like, oh, Harrison Ford's in this. You know Harrison Ford, from Star Wars, Indiana Jones, and there's other things that you like when he was younger. Like, it became, so the marketing in America was like 80% Harrison Ford. Like, he did all the press junkets and all that sort of thing. So they had to reveal it. So the moment they had to sort of reveal everything in the States, they were like, we've got to reveal everything everywhere because now everything's on the internet. So it's weirdly like, kind of, ironic that the Red Hulk
is reactive. That is as funny. But again, and that's one of the things I think that not ruined the sequel trilogy of Star Wars. I love Force Awakens. I love Last Jedi. Took some risks, a couple of misses. I think overall it was a hit. Rise of Skywalker was a boring. I know people. I enjoy the film in general because I like all Star Wars, but it didn't take any risks. It did the same recycled, boring story. They revealed everything in the trailers. and it just fell flat and completely undid everything he set up in prior films.
I gotta say, Rise of Skywalker is the only Star Wars film I cannot rewatch. I've tried twice and I cannot rewatch that.
Well, it's annoying because the first half of the film I think is actually quite good. It's the reverse.
Yeah, but I know where it goes. But I know where it's going.
This is it. Exactly what I say to people is it's the reverse Phantom Menace. Phantom Menace, if you can get through the start, you can get to the end. It's the payoff. Rise of Skywalker, you watch the first half, you go, that was awesome, actually. There's some really cool concepts. And the second half is just crap. It's just boring and no dramatic tension, and it's just and I'll say again with the Red Hulk thing, just back to that quick, is what frustrated me is the whole of Falcon and Winter Soldier, which I enjoyed as a series. The whole of that was all talking about how weighted it was having a black Captain America. Isaiah Bradley was the heart of that, and also Brave New World. Heart of it all. His scenes in Brave New World are amazing. The black Captain America, the weight is America and the world ready for a black man to take the mantle. That's powerful. That's amazing. It was my favorite part of Falcon and the Winter Soldier. Because of the reactions from people online and because of Disney Marvel's fucking cowardice and pathetic opinions on these things. I'm so scared to offend people. So it's art, mate. It's going to offend people. If you don't offend people with art, you're doing it wrong. You can't make art without offending someone. It's just impossible. That's what makes art art. Big risks are great for it. And when they drew back and they're like, oh yeah, the reason that people don't respect Cap is because the super soldier serum. It's like, that has never been a factor. No one's cared about that. It's because he's black. It's a major part of his character that you've established. It's one of the things I was so excited about. That's what I thought Brave New World was going to be. It's about a white, oppressive, conservative guy who becomes the very thing he hates, which is Hulk, and the thing that he spent his entire life and destroying his family over, fighting a man who spent his entire life being pushed down for being black, getting a reign of a character, being a reign of this being who he has to take on the mantle because he's the right person for the job, and the world not accepting him. He accepts himself, and then he has to go into this world and show to everyone else, look, I don't give a fuck what you think. I'm black. I'm Captain America. It doesn't matter. And instead they went, no, it's about the super soldier serum. So you've just hollowed out your own character. You've spoiled the film's twist because of Harrison Ford. And the whole marketing, as you say, is about Harrison Ford. Does anyone care when Harrison Ford's in a movie? He's not a good enough actor to draw anyone in, really.
Not anymore. I mean, he was a draw. Let's be clear.
He's a good actor, don't get me wrong. But I don't know, from the MCU now, I don't think, I might be wrong, but I don't think there's many people who are like,
no.
I'm kind of done with the MCU now. Oh, wait, Harrison Ford's in it. I'm going to go watch that now. No.
Let's be fair. Like, people of my age and above are going, it's Indiana Jones. But I'm not going like, I'm going to go see a Harrison Ford film. Like, I haven't watched, I'm not going, do you know what? I've got to go see sort of like, was it 6 Days and 7 Nights? I'm not going to watch sort of like, all right, I'll watch Air Force One. Not going to lie. It's a good film. But you're right. He's not a draw in the way that he was.
Yeah.
And they were hoping that he would be. I think that's the part of it that's kind of weird. So I do, and I feel that with that has been the sort of the problem with superhero films. The burden I feel that superhero films carry and have always carried is every time they do things, they carry the burden of success. Like every film does, right? But they've always had this thing of they've got to, Batman was not 89, huge success. All right, kind of different to the comics, but you get this massive, you get Batmania. And so they go like to Tim Burton, like, you give us Batman Returns. And he gives them Batman Returns, and Burger King get pissed off because they can't sell, I think it's McDonald's can't do Happy Meals with Danny DeVito's Penguin.
Because he bites someone's nose off.
He bites someone's nose, and he's terrifying. And the same with, you either do something like that, and you say you swing for the fences. And I think Batman Returns is a massive swing for the fences.
Love it.
I love that film.
Love it.
And it works in the same way that you go like, it's not kind of like it's a what if or an Elseworld Batman. Like it's not Batman, but like it's awesome. Like that is fantastic film. Or you say you go safe and you go like, you don't lean into that. And what ends up happening, it becomes a muddled mess, and you get Captain America Brave New World, where you're like, I can sort of see what you wanted to do, but you kind of bottled it and did loads of reshoots, and it kind of falls apart. It's still a good film. I enjoy a lot of that film, but the tragedy of that film is exactly like Superman 2. You watch that film, Captain America The Brave New World, and you go, I can see a great film in here somewhere, and you chopped it to pieces.
It's so disappointing. And it makes me not want to watch the film as much. And that's why I prefer the prequels to the sequels in Star Wars. George Lucas did a lot of crap wrong, but he was consistent, and he knew where he was going.
Had a vision. 100%. And I think that's consistent. Right. Anyway, we shall wrap up on there. That's been So Mike, you've joined me on Superman and Superman 2, and I'm off now into murkier waters with Superman 3 and Superman 4 Quest for Peace before we then, and Returns and beyond. But thank you. I'm glad thank you for joining me on this journey. And I hope you enjoyed them. And,
I've really have. And I wrongly thought I wouldn't enjoy the original Superman. I thought it was going to be too cheesy, too weak, and just too bleh. But the bits that I actually thought I was going to dislike the most were the bits I liked the most. And Christopher Reeve is incredible. Just a quick question. Are you going to do the Christopher Reeve documentary Superman?
I was thinking, yes, I am. Yes, I haven't watched it yet. And I am thinking of adding it as a bonus to sort of do these after I've done the first 4. So,
okay, because if you're more than welcome to do it as a solo thing or invite other people. But if you wanted to invite me back, I can watch the other Superman films in the meantime and then come back, very lightly touch upon them, because I want an excuse to watch that, but I'm not going to watch that without watching 3 and 4. So if you decide to do that either as a bonus thing or whatever,
we'll slot it in, because obviously I do Fortnite. Let's slot it in, but 20th Century Geek exclusive. Mike Burton will be back for
Super/Man.
Yeah, Superman.
So thank you.
We will do that because I want to watch that. I haven't had a chance to watch that yet.
Awesome.
So
thank you. Yeah, I really appreciate you. I love, as you say, I love deep diving. It's one of my favorite things. When you and I probably only do like 1 or 2 podcasts a year, but we do so much like research and stuff around it. Yeah. There's always so much to say. And you got me into Moon Knight. He's one of my absolute favorites ever. So I really appreciate that. And obviously I watched all the Batman films because of you. So why not do the Superman films as well? Using you as a vessel as an excuse for me to watch all these things. Like I need to find reasons to do them. So
Megan must love it when I creep up onto the horizon and I'm like, I've got something new.
She didn't watch Superman 2. No. And I'm not going to make her watch 3 or 4.
Don't.
It would be cruel to do to her. So yeah, I'm choosing certain podcast things now. Like I'm going to do a back to filmography with Jack, and I'm going to do one of the McConaughey films.
Nice.
And she's seen it before, and she's like, "You're not going to make me watch that again, are you?" And I'm like, "No, I'll watch it by myself." So now I'm doing a bit more selective stuff with Megan, with making her watch certain things. But I really enjoyed this. Thank you so much for having me on. Shall I do plugs just quick?
Yeah, go for it. Where can people find you?
At Genuine Chit Chat, all the social media places. I've been doing a lot more snippets and stuff, making a lot more reels on Instagram and TikTok and YouTube shorts and stuff like that. So if you're unsure about listening to huge long episodes of mine, go on any of my social media and check out basically lots of little clips and snippets. I've had a really great conversation with Tony Holt about Invisible Man and Black America and banned books. Great conversation with Jess B. Davies from Femon about smutty romantasy and the value of it, actually, and really getting into reading again, not letting people like judge you for what you want to read in your own little space and stuff. Really great stuff there. And I've got an extra long 2-parter with Paul, Super Dummy Paul of Comics in Motion and stuff, about lots of different random things. Started off about Vegas wedding. It goes into a really weird place at the end. And because of it, and I won't spoil it so people can go check it out, at the end of this year, we're going to tackle something that I can guarantee no one has ever tackled before. I can guarantee it. Yeah, it's really random. Paul was the only one who knew about it until the pod we did together. And so it's really weird and interesting. So very excited about that. Had to order something from a really random, weird little tiny shop in Ireland. And it says how many exist. It's just the most bizarre thing. It's really cool. So that'll be. I
thought you were going to go I've ordered something from the dark web.
Oh gosh, no, not quite that bad. No, random little like a historical society somewhere. I just barely any copies of it. So really, really fun stuff there. And yeah, you can find me in all the social media places. Again, check out all the stuff I've done with Scott. Moon Knight retrospective, Batman retrospective. We've done quite a few pods together and stuff. But yeah.
Do check it out. Genuine Chit Chat. Easy to find on all the social medias, and you're right, you do pop up my reels quite a lot now, which is quite cool. So yes, and from here, so you listen to 20th Century Geek, go check out Stories Out of Time and Space. Me and Julian sort of working our way through, got all kinds of bits and pieces going on over there. And check out the Patreon, because what Julie and I are doing on there at the moment is we're jumping ahead a little bit. What we're doing is releasing all of our stuff on there quite far in advance. So you're getting loads of exclusive, at least 12, if not more, months ahead at the moment. We've just done the RoboCop retrospective, which was really good fun for the most part. There are parts that were better to talk about than watch. That might actually be true of this Superman retrospective as well. So do go check out, links down below. But again, Mike, it's a wonderful time to always talk to you. Really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
I appreciate it. And Echo, go check out Patreon because also, as well as getting early access stuff, there's lots of little things of some of my favorite stuff that Scott does, No Shade on Julian, is when you do 30-minute thoughts, and there's loads of them in the back catalogue. So if people haven't supported you, support, few quid a month, and then just go through all the 30-minute thought stuff, because some of them are really great. And actually, some of the stuff you said are really profound, and really, I think about them quite a lot when you talk about future of these kind of movies or what went wrong with this and stuff. I really, really enjoy them. So exclusive content and early content. So I'm a big...
There'll be more of those. I haven't done for a while, but I will be bringing it back because, I've been thinking about action movies. I've got some action stuff. I've got to try and...
you got some cool stuff in the background
I have got some stuff going on, yeah. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for listening on, and we shall see you on the next episode.